The American Renaissance was a literary period that went on from 1828 to 1865. It was also known as the Romantic era or the Age of Transcendentalism. Known to be the greatest period of American literature, the American Renaissance was a time for many known authors such as Walt Whitman, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Edgar Allan Poe, Herman Melville, and Margaret Fuller. These authors of the Renaissance clearly expressed the characteristics of Romanticism and Transcendentalism in their works of poetry and prose. Characterizing most art, literature, architecture, and historiography during this period, Romanticism was an intellectual movement which greatly focused on and emphasized the importance of subjectivity, emotions, and individualism. Transcendentalism, another movement prevalent at the time when New England writers and philosophers adhered to an idealistic standpoint, centered itself on the belief of unity of all creation, innate goodness of man, and superiority of insight over logic, and experience in revealing the deepest, darkest truths of the world. American poets Edgar Allan Poe and Henry David Thoreau are two great examples of Renaissance writers, both of which had writing styles significantly differing from one another, while still expressing the typical features and essence of their period. Poe specialized in the ideological concepts held within the bounds of Romanticism, and Thoreau worked in the field of the aforementioned ideal structure of Transcendentalism. Edgar Allan Poe, who was born on January 19, 1809, was a writer and poet famous for his imaginative and expressive poems and short stories, ranging from the cryptic to the utterly macabre tales, which up to this moment captures interest from all corners of the world. His unique and innovative works of mystery and horror inspired and created what is known now as detective fiction, a literary genre. For instance, spawned from his creative mind, Monsieur C. Auguste Dupin, a highly skilled detective, was the protagonist for a 3-part series of short stories. In addition to this, most if not all of his works have become classics, including The Telltale Heart and The Fall of the House of Usher. His dark literature might as well be taken from his life of mystery, and even his unbeknownst death on October 7, 1849, offers questions yet to be answered until now. Henry David Thoreau, born July 12, 1817, was exposed to Transcendentalist values in the 1840s as an understudy of fellow writer and poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, whom he had befriended after his college years. Since then, he has always had strong beliefs in Transcendentalism. At around the same time, he also began writing nature poetry, and in 1845, he started living in his small home in Walden Pond, which was part of his mentor's property. It was then and there where he wrote his most famous work, Walden. Along with his transcendentalist viewpoint, heralded as an original thinker, he also became recognized as an abolitionist and a believer in civil disobedience, an active and professed way of refusing to obey current laws in a certain society, which led him to write one of his most influential essays, Resistance to Civil Government. On May 6, 1862, having been plagued by an illness for decades, Thoreau lost the battle and succumbed to the disease. Poe and Thoreau possess styles that are quite different from each other. Poe's works deliver mysterious themes, consisting mostly of Gothic and horror elements. Many of his works explore the questions on the notion of death and present gruesome but eloquent descriptions in the decay of the human body. In The Fall of the House of Usher, Poe illustrates the physical state of a certain Roderick by referring to him as having a degree of cadaverousness of complexion, with thin and very pallid lips and silken hair. Poe also often delves into the psychological and spiritual, revealing unnerving experiences of insanity and the like. He even manages to describe a dangerous plague of evil spiritual properties, capable of causing fatal symptoms of profuse bleeding at the pores, sharp pains, and sudden dizziness. On the other hand, Thoreau, as a transcendentalist, focuses on philosophical and naturalistic perspectives. He incorporates metaphors which are often taken from nature, and observations and reflections are found all throughout his works. In Walden, Thoreau states that it is far more glorious to carve and paint the very atmosphere and medium through which we look, comparing an artist's perception with how one views the world through a very personal lens. He likes to go into detail and precisely describe his introspections and examinations of both the natural and the conceptual. According directly to Thoreau, the question is not what you look at, but what you see. And this quote states so much about how his lifestyle applies to his literary works and vice versa. Hence, his writing style can surely be noted as both of poetic and scientific. Furthermore, as bleak and grim as Edgar Allan Poe's stories may have seemed at the time, he did not fail to express romantic themes in his writing. Emotion is one of the most dominant traits found in Edgar Allan Poe's poems and stories. This shows true with one of the last poems he ever wrote. Poe's Annabel Lee explains a love between the narrator and Annabel as being so strong that even an unfathomable force of the supernatural could never break it. Poe personally believed that the subject matter of art should be centered on emotion and affect the reader's emotions directly. The Pit and the Pendulum, another one of his short stories, embodies a great interaction between varying degrees of emotions in its protagonist, as this person of interest discovers the meaning of survival and the fear of imminent death. Poe's characters are often clouded with emotion, even his most intellectual ones, such as Monsieur Dupont from the Purloined Letter and the Murders in Rue Morgue. Although Thoreau also portrayed Romanticism in his works, shown in Walden when he involves the emphasis on one's own individuality, he stayed true to Transcendentalism as the center point and maintained a consistent appeal to it at every glance. This is exactly how Henry David Thoreau emphasizes independence and self-reliance in his book Walden, while at the same time explores a depth of emotion that grounds itself into the reader's heart. He explores nature and reflects on the simplicity of life and human emotion. Thoreau even grasps such a combination quite clearly in his poem Nature, and states here that he would rather be thy child, referring to nature itself. Both Poe's and Thoreau's work of fiction and non-fiction mainly focuses on the human personality. As overwrought and agitated as Poe's characters are in his stories, they were all clearly displayed with regard to the nature of mankind, both in weakness and in strength. In contrast to this, Thoreau's defining trait with his writing employs a calm and peaceful mood, frequently making references to vivid, instinctive, and natural representations. Nevertheless, both writers clearly deliver the themes of their era and skillfully interpret them in their own unique ways. The two execute sensitive and engaging narratives and ideas without losing touch of the connection between that of human emotion, the avenue towards the limits of the mind, and that of the persona, the aspect often viewed from the outlook of others. Romanticism and Transcendentalism are two ideologies that have long influenced America during the American Renaissance. Emotion and individualism was the center of many things during this time, expressed in many different ways and methods, as we can see with Edgar Allan Poe and Henry David Thoreau. Although there is a current standoff between rendering art as a merely regulated entertainment choke point upheld by the mainstream media and advancing a real diversity of opinions seen in the best crafts to have ever been accomplished, Romanticism and Transcendentalism has successfully trumped whatever odds might be in the way up to this day. Taking note of the fact that this period is considered the greatest literary period in America, there is no doubt that it has shaped modern American literature and even its society and culture throughout the years. If not for these, America may have come to accept a completely different humanistic perspective, and as seemingly far-fetched an effect as this can get, the country may not have been prevalent and prosperous at enabling a constant and steady light on the importance of life and the understanding of what it means to truly live. With the individualistic values and the attention on the relevance and goodness of man, America was able to achieve greatness in literature and eminence as a nation, from being known to have many of the world's greatest authors, to liberty for its people, and so much more.